Wake that ass up.
Early in the morning.
The Breakfast Club.
Morning, everybody. It's DJ Envy, Angela Yee, Charlamagne the Guy. We are the Breakfast Club. We got a special guest on the phone lines right now. Van Jones,
Yes,
welcome,
indeed.
sir.
Welcome. Glad to be here.
Man,
Now,
first of all, how are you? How are you during this quarantine?
Like I say, look, I'm safe, I'm supplied, and I'm symptom free. That's my 3 S's every day. I'm safe, I'm supplied, I'm symptom free, so I'm good.
And you're still out here fighting because you're out here using your voice to ring the alarm on how coronavirus is impacting the Black community and the prison system in America. Why should we be using our voices to speak on that?
Well, I mean, because we got 2.4 million people who are locked up, biggest prison population in the world, a quarter of everybody locked up on planet Earth, 25% are locked up here, way disproportionately Black, brown, and almost all folks who didn't have enough money for a good lawyer. So that population cannot social distance. They don't have hand sanitizer. They don't have soap. They're packed on top of each other like sardines. When a virus hits that population, it moves at 7 to 15 times the rate of speed through a population as normal. And so those folks need help. They need to be, we need to do 3 things. We need to get as many of them out as we can safely. We need to rush medical supplies in, and we need to stop putting people in prison and jail for minor BS, drug charges, jaywalking, whatever stuff. Those 3 things have to happen.
Now, what you mentioned our community. Now, besides jail, our community, of course, is underinsured, underemployed. They're not giving us the testing that we need. How can we change that a little bit? Because they have us in hoods and projects where there is no backyard. So when you're social distancing, it's almost impossible because you're always constantly around people.
They talk about something called PPE, which just basically means mask, gloves to a certain extent, though, that's a little bit overrated. And other kind of protective stuff. That's going to become a civil rights issue. That's going to become a human rights issue. Rich folk already are socially isolated. They live in gated communities and big mansions with one person in there. Every day they're socially isolated. If you poor, by definition, it is hard to socially isolate because you got a whole bunch of other people around you who are also broke. Housing projects, homeless shelters, the hood in general, jails, prisons, women's shelters. So for us, the ability to have hand sanitizer, tests, masks, all that sort of stuff, those become survival issues. And so it's a human rights issue. And so we have to fight for that, and especially for the people who are in prison. And that's why the Reform Alliance, as you know, started by Jay-Z, started by Meek Mill, started by Michael Rubin, has been working hard. We flooded in 130,000 masks into Rikers, into the prisons in Tennessee and other places, just trying to save lives.
Amazing.
But they weren't doing it.
I saw that Shaka Singer responded to Ellen DeGeneres because she made that joke about feeling like she was in prison while she was being quarantined at home. And I saw Shaka Singer took that time to educate her on exactly what is happening in the prison system right now. How do you respond to somebody like Ellen DeGeneres comparing being locked up in her mansion, quarantined, to being locked up in prison?
Well, first of all, Shaka Senghor was the person who led the charge and is leading the charge to get the mask and everything into the prisons in the first place. The Reform Alliance actually united with Shaka to get that done. And, if you haven't read Shaka's book, Righting My Wrongs, get that right now. It's an unbelievable book. Oprah Winfrey reduced to tears. It was really the first time she stepped into this fight. So Shaka's a major person. When Shaka's not going to complain about something that is just petty, Charlamagne's not going to make somebody the donkey of the day who he respects as much as Ellen DeGeneres unless it's serious. I would really encourage Ellen DeGeneres, if she wants to wade into these waters, please have Shaka on, have me on, have Topeka Sam on, have people on who can really tell you what this is about, because the audience is listening. People think sitting in your house, chilling on Netflix is prison. Since you mentioned that, you need to understand what's really happening in our prisons. It's not nothing nice at all. And she can now use her platform since she raised it. Ellen raised it as Charlamagne
That's
said,
right.
she can use her platform to really educate her listeners and change and save lives. She can save lives.
Absolutely.
You know, it's impossible to have these conversations without talking about systemic racism, because to me, that's the greatest disease in America that we've never found a cure for. So how can we address all these issues, but also let folks know that, you know, it's an election coming up and we might need to use that to just attempt to, you know, chip away at this racism in America, because we really need to dismantle systemic racism.
Well, listen, you know, this pandemic is an epidemic jumping on top of an epidemic, jumping on top of an epidemic. Why is this virus killing Black people way worse than anybody else? Because we have hypertension worse than anybody else, obesity, asthma, all those issues. Diabetes worse than anybody else. Why is that? Because the epidemic of racism that's been going on for 400 years, which means that we live in communities where we have the least access to good health care, the least access to good food, and underemployed in jobs that are now called essential. We have to go out there and do these jobs. We have to go out there to the grocery stores. We have to be out there with the Amazon deliveries with no protection often. And so when you look at us being underemployed in these more dangerous jobs, when you look at us not having the great doctors, the best healthcare. In fact, even when we get a doctor, sometimes the doctor looks at us differently than they would look at a white person with the same symptoms, the same complaints, and doesn't give us the medication, doesn't take our pain seriously. Then it's an epidemic of COVID jumping on an epidemic of high blood pressure, et cetera, jumping on the epidemic of racism. And that's why we're having all these problems and issues. And that's why it's so much more important for us. We're dying at the age of 30 of this virus. Mm-hmm. Nobody's telling you that. You go to Detroit, you go to New Orleans, you go to New York City. We're dying of the virus at the age of 40 and 50, not 70, not 80, 50s, 40s, 30s. Why? Because high blood pressure, especially. If you have high blood pressure, if a doctor has ever told you you have high blood pressure, if you take pills every day for anything, you are at extreme risk. They never tell us it the right way, Charlamagne. They always say comorbidities. Well, you know, I had an aunt tell me, well, my doctor never told me I have a comorbidity. Well, see, I said, well, did he say you have sugar? You know, that's what she calls diabetes. Yeah. Do they say you have pressure? Because she calls high blood pressure, you know, the old folk. I said, well, if you have sugar and you have pressure, that's a comorbidity. Well, he never told me that. I said, that don't listen to the news, listen to me. If you take pills every day for anything, stay at home. Not just grandmama, your 27-year-old nephew that has an inhaler, call him and say, quit partying, quit, you know, hanging out with your friends, quit playing spades. If this thing gets you, you might be out of here if you're 32 years old.
Now, how do we change our community, though? Because we talk about that. But like you said, you know, if you look at our community, you see very few juice bars. You see very few healthy places to eat. You see very few places that can really support and benefit our community. But if you go into other areas, you see so many health food stores, green life stores, juice bars. You see vegan restaurants. You see yoga places, you know, for mental health and all these different places. But if you look in our communities, it seems like they're setting us up where we can't win. You know what I mean? Because if we have diabetes, high blood pressure, and all these things, and we get the coronavirus, like you said, there's a higher chance that we're going to die. How do we change that after all of this?
Well, I'm going to tell you, we have to figure out what is the next normal. Right now, everything is abnormal. What's the next normal? The next normal has to be us putting health first. We've had a whole conversation about putting wealth first, and that has actually been somewhat positive. Sometimes it's, you know, silly, you know, prosperity preachers and stuff like that, just pray your way to money. But there has been a conversation about wealth building that has shifted our thought about that. There has been a conversation led by Charlamagne about mental health. It used to be talking about mental health completely off the table. That's now being talked about. After Kobe died, you saw people talk about, I'm depressed. Black men. What? That's a culture shift that's happened over the past few years. Now it needs to be about complete health. Stress levels, not good, makes your immune system compromised. and then not eating right and all that sort of stuff. So listen, the same way that when Kobe died, you had people all of a sudden talking about, let me be a good dad to my daughter and not just my son. Overnight. That has to happen. The next normal has to be Black people become the healthiest, most every video is green drinks. Everything becomes about us building up our immune system, because this is not the last virus to come through here.
Now, let me
How do
ask
you
you
think
this.
this?
It is a very critical time for leadership because there's so much happening right now. And we see that Bernie Sanders has dropped out of the race. Now it's Joe Biden. How should Joe Biden be stepping up? And what can he do to earn people's trust right now, especially at this critical time?
Well, listen, for older Black voters, they already trust Joe Biden. So he's halfway there with us. But younger voters, turned against him in droves because they don't feel that he is a champion. And this is the time before the plague. People felt they needed a champion, especially the younger folks. They either didn't get a chance to go to college, or they went and came out with all this debt and are now having jobs that were below what they needed to have a college degree for in the first place. There's so much that was going on from a environmental point of view, all these different points of view. The climate, falling apart, jobs falling apart, income inequality, criminal justice. The young people wanted a champion who's going to stand up and fight. If you look at the voters, they saw that in Bernie. They didn't see that in Biden. So he's halfway there with the older Black voters, but he needs to show some passion about this. And I'm telling you, when you look at how many of our people could die in prisons and jails, I do want to come back to that. How many young Black folk, because of these underlying health issues, the doctors not being there, the hospitals not being there, he should get called right now for respirators to be rushed to Black communities explicitly. Even Donald Trump says it's happening to Black people more than anybody else. Donald Trump said that yesterday. Mm-hmm. So he should say, rush the respirators to Black communities, rush the respirators to Black hospitals. We know that's where they're going to be needed. I haven't heard him say that.
You know what scared me, Van? Yesterday when Trump did say that. He said that, the coronavirus is really impacting the Black community, but he said he didn't know why. Do you really believe he didn't know why?
Look, I don't know what Trump knows or understands or what, from moment to moment. I know that we know why. We know why because HIV did the same thing. HIV started in the so-called white community. And everybody said, well, it's just, it's kind of a gay thing, a white thing. I'm not worried about it. But once it moved, it ripped through our communities, it ripped through African nations. Why? Because of that historic racism in the healthcare system. There have been, and this is not just us on the Breakfast Club complaining about it. There have been study after study that shows 2 people can walk into a doctor's office, 1 Black, 1 white, with the exact same complaint. The doctor will give the white person attention, listen to them, give them medication, give them 4 or 5 different tests. The Black person, they barely write it down what they said. And so we have to be extra vigilant, especially with our parents or our grandparents. We have to go with them to the appointment. We have to ask 3 or 4 more questions. We have to be very vigilant. Also, underinsured. Also, the clinics in our community don't look like the same thing and they do in other communities. So we know why. It's not that we're getting infected at a greater rate. It's that when we do get infected, we are dying at a greater rate because they're not testing us in the first place. They're not catching it early. And then we have these underlying health issues. Don't call them comorbidities, health issues. We're taking pills every day or supposed to. And that's what's taking us out of here. But we know, if he doesn't know, we know.
Why do you think our people take things so light at times? Like, at first, it was this thing that Black people couldn't get the coronavirus, Why do you think we take things so lightly all the time?
Because we have so many problems already. I mean, if every time something else happened, we freaked out. We'd be freaked out all day. We already had 20 problems before this pandemic came. And so we're not going to be quick to jump up and down about the next thing. Also, just to be honest, it was a bunch of white people at first. It was white people who went to Asia, Black people don't really go to Asia that much. We might go to Jamaica, but we're not trying to go to, Wuhan, China. That's not even what we do. And so, or they're talking about the nursing homes. They're only showing white nursing homes in Florida. So, maybe some wishful thinking, maybe at some point something bad would happen, not to us worse, But, and like I said, we already have 1,000 problems. You know, it's like get in the back of the line. You know, it used to be when you talk about climate change and Black people before Hurricane Katrina, you know, and Sandy, people said, I don't want to hear about that. I got 1,000 other problems. You worry about the polar bears, man. You used to tell me that all the time. You worry about the polar bears. We got real problems. And so I'm not surprised, but I appreciate the Breakfast Club for getting out in front of this thing and saying, no, we're getting it worse than everybody else. And our vulnerable populations in housing projects, they need to be rushing in NASA level protective gear for all of our frontline workers. Everybody you see in these grocery stores who are Black and brown overwhelmingly should be wearing NASA level protective gear. Everybody you see, you know, in these Amazon delivery trucks should have NASA level. If you care about human beings and not just about keeping your corporation going, you need to run into your reserves, go to the bank, get these loans they just put out there, and get protective gear. We've got, this becomes a civil rights issue because it's our people on the front lines as essential workers. It's our people in the neighborhoods that don't have the respirators. It's our people in the prisons who don't have even hand sanitizers, let alone, as I said, the Reform Alliance is not only putting in medical equipment and masks. You know, thank you to Michael Rubin, thank you to Shaka Senghor, thank you to Meek Mill, thank you to Jay-Z. But we're also saying get the people out. And we have a plan at reformalliance.com where we are calling upon the Department of Justice and all 50 governors to get, if you old and sick, get them out of there. They're gonna die. Nobody was sentenced to die in America in a prison from a virus, no matter what they did. And they've got a lot of people who are dying right now on drug charges, dying on probation violations, dying because they don't have enough bail, dying. And we have to take this seriously.
And we see what's happening in Chicago in particular, in Cook County Jail, that they have almost 400 prisoners with coronavirus. So what's being done there right now that there's been attention brought to that? So now what?
You know, again, go to reformalliance.com and help us, but you need to put maximum pressure. That's a jail. That's not a prison. That means you got people in there awaiting trial. You got people in there who have never been convicted of anything. They just sit on there on bail, or they have very, very minor charges. So you literally, people are being sentenced to die who've never even been convicted of a crime from this virus. That every person's bail should be reset to 0, number one. And then there should be an assessment. Are you a danger to somebody? You're gonna go out here and kill somebody, or you'll kill your wife or whatever. If you're not a threat, not having money to bail out should not get you killed in Chicago. Everybody's bail should be reset by the judges to 0 and get people out of there. And then of course, tests, you know, have people self-quarantine. Some people say, well, if you let people out of jail, they're gonna go home and get everybody sick. The doors of the church should be open. Nobody should be going to Easter Sunday this year. You're gonna get killed or spread it to people. But we got Black churches on every corner across America that should be empty. Use them to house people coming home from jails and prisons for 14 days. Let them, you know, self-quarantine there, and then we can move on. We have the assets. Our community can take care of itself, but we've got to mobilize now and hey, listen, in Chicago today is gonna be another jail tomorrow. Jail conditions are just petri dishes for pandemics. That's why you want to get as many people out as possible. Don't put people in for dumb reasons, and rush in medical supplies and masks the way that we're doing at the Reform Alliance, and I'm sure other organizations as well. And again, I thank Shaka Senghor for his leadership on this.
Salute to my guy, Shaka. Van, I want to ask you, how do you think coronavirus is going to impact the upcoming presidential elections in November?
Ooh, you know, Charlamagne, I don't know how I'm going to pandemic-proof the election. It's a lot that can go wrong. First of all, in a lot of places, who are the people who run the little precincts and stuff? Senior citizens.
Old people. Yeah.
Old people. They probably can't safely do that anymore. So now who's gonna run all these precincts? You know, high school students? I mean, how's that gonna work? Then some people are gonna wanna come and stand in lines for 3 or 4 hours. So how do they participate? In a lot of states, mail-in is not a thing. We always mail it in. That's not true in a lot of states. You have to have what do you call it? A valid reason. Is that going to be a valid reason in every state, in every precinct? Also, a lot of Black folk don't trust mailing in a ballot because they remember some of those scandals where the white post office people were throwing the ballots away. And so how do you protect for that? You got Native Americans who live on big reservations where the post office doesn't come. How do they? So once you start trying to, what do you call it? Pandemic proof the election. So everybody has a right to vote, and not just vote, but to vote safely. How do you deliver on that? So that's why they're ramping up right now. I was just on a call with Vanita Gupta and some of these other, civil rights people. They're screaming and yelling. They're waving their arms. They're saying, listen, we need billions of dollars from Congress right now to buy the proper equipment, to have the high capacity sorters. So if all these ballots start coming in, they can be counted within a month. There's a whole bunch that has to happen. So that's the other thing. We're going from a public health crisis to an economic crisis to now a democracy crisis.
Yep.
And, we have to raise our voices. And listen, once the Black community gets dialed in and we start saying, first of all, don't let people die in jail. Second of all, we need to protect our workers, our frontline workers with NASA level protective equipment, at least a mask. We want NASA level equipment. And we want statues and monuments to these nurses, and statues and monuments to these Amazon workers and everybody else across the country when it's over. And we want an election where we can vote without dying. When Diddy said vote or die, he didn't mean vote and die. He said vote or die. And that's really where we are now. When you have this level of a collapse across the country, of basic public health for our people, I don't care what's going on, we have to vote.
Now,
Van,
I got a couple more. Hold on, I got a couple more questions for Van. Has anybody pushed back on you yet? Has anybody pushed back on you yet, Van, and said, "What are you talking about? Coronavirus impacts everybody, not just Black people."
So there's some Black people who feel like I was putting it more on us, like we're more ignorant than anybody else. And of course, you have a lot of white people who are also, not taking this seriously. You got white governors in the South not taking this seriously. But my concern, as you know, Charlamagne, has always been, as Jesus said, for the least of these, our Black and brown and broke brothers and sisters who are not getting the information properly. So I haven't had anybody push back on me except Black folks saying, you're making us look bad by saying that Black folks are tripping and not doing enough. But the stakes of us not taking it seriously is totally different than the stakes of anybody else. And so nobody's pushed back on me, but Black folks feel like I'm making us look bad. But I'd rather have some people feel uncomfortable, maybe feeling bougie about it, than to have people dying for no reason. And by the way, Easter at home, hashtag Easter at home. I know it's only the one time of the year you go to church, but you're gonna have to skip it this year because you're gonna wind up killing a whole bunch of people. Jesus can hear you pray at home, and we'll just do Easter later on.
Absolutely. And listen, Van, I like what you said too about coronavirus proving Bernie's point. Can you expound on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's ironic that Bernie is pulling out at the very moment that the pandemic proves he was right. Now, I never endorse anybody. That's not my thing. But I'm gonna tell you right now. Does it sound crazy now that everybody should be able to see a doctor for free? Does that sound crazy to anybody today? Does it sound crazy that people who are risking their lives to keep your grocery store open should make more than $15 an hour? Could they pay you $15 an hour to stand in their grocery store for 8 hours today? That's not, they deserve hazard pay of another $50 on top of that. So now $15 an hour for those workers doesn't sound so crazy, does it? You can walk through every one of his things. They say shelter in place. If you're homeless, you don't have a place. So when he says, let's spend $1 trillion on housing everybody, so then you don't have people out in the streets getting the virus, sharing the virus, making it harder, in the homeless shelters and making it worse for everybody. And by the way, everybody deserves a place to live. Does that sound crazy today? So many family leave. he was saying if you have a baby, if you're sick, you got to take care of somebody, you should be able to stay home and not lose your job. Now everybody's being forced to stay home. Do you want to lose your job? So everything he talked about, which said, oh, that's some throwback stuff to the 60s. That's some idealism from the 60s. It turns out a lot of that stuff was hard-headed realism about this deadly new century and what we're going to have to do to take care of each other. And I'm glad a lot of people thought the economy was run by the white folks on Wall Street. Oh, the stock market, how is it doing? Oh my goodness, the economy. Those folks can't even go to work without a woman of color as a nanny dealing with their kids, without Black and brown teachers in private and public schools dealing with their kids, without somebody helping their grandmother in a nursing home, usually an immigrant woman of color. And if those people aren't safe and protected, if those people can't deal with their family, even the white boys on Wall Street don't know what to do. So the economy is not based on the people at the top. By definition, it's based on the people at the bottom. And if you're not giving them health care and good wages and respect and protection, the whole thing falls apart. Bernie was right. I'm not saying I'm endorsing him. I'm not saying who I voted for, but I'm saying this month, Bernie seemed like the most sane person in American politics.
Right. So with that said, Joe Biden doesn't inspire me at all. So what should Joe Biden embrace from Bernie's policies to inspire people that he may not be inspiring right now?
I think we're gonna have to deal with this election totally differently. It's got to be the Avengers versus Thanos. Everybody got to run. As if, you know what I mean? Like, don't worry. I see Biden more like Hawkeye. You know, I guess he's a hero, but I'm not worried. I'm not waiting for him to save me. Everybody has got to go, and act like they're running for president. Every community leader, every Cory Booker, every mayor, everybody who has a voice in the platform needs to run for what we believe in. And I wouldn't be worrying about this candidate, that candidate. We're never going to be inspired like we're inspired by Obama. And what we should be inspired by is the fact that the next normal needs to mean this could never happen again. When Obama had the same problem with when Ebola jumped out, his White House handled it differently though. And so we have to be able to talk about the kind of leadership that we want. But listen, it's not going to be just about the president. It's going to be about the vice president, Congress, the Supreme Court, your mayor, your DA, and then everybody's got to run. Avengers versus Thanos. It's not Hawkeye versus Thanos.
Is there anybody you'd like to see as vice president? Some options that you think would be a good pick that would inspire you at all?
Either Kamala or Stacey. Stacey Abrams, who's Black, or Kamala Harris, who's Black. Black women are the base and the backbone of this party. So one of them got to have it.
Thank you, Van, for joining us, man. We appreciate you checking in. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. That's right. And I love what you said. The KKK itself could not have invented a virus better designed to kill Black people. You said that. That's a very powerful line. And if that doesn't rally people to really take this serious, I don't know what will.
Hey, listen, I'm saying everything I can. That's true. If you wanted to figure out a way to kill Black people, you couldn't come up with a better way than this virus, because it jumps on people who have all the conditions Black people have.
All right. Wow. Well, thank you, Van Jones, again.
Thank you.
Appreciate you.
It's the Breakfast Club. It's Van Jones.